I've been calling 2025 the year of professionalization for the creator economy, and I think we are seeing brands just get more serious about their influencer marketing strategies. They have more tools, they have more resources, they have more experience, and they're using that to really inform their decisions rather than blindly throwing money at influencer marketing. So we're kind of entering this more professionalized, broader realm of the creator economy.
Explore the minds and marketing strategies behind today's winning brands and businesses. Tap into the power of the creator economy with Earned by CreatorIQ.
Hi, Jasmine. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
I'm excited to see you again. Last time we saw each other was, 2 weeks ago now in Las Vegas?
Yeah, at the NAB show.
Yes, and now you are here on Earned. We tried to do that live at NAB, and I think for various reasons, mostly like busy schedules, there was so much going on at that conference, which we can talk about, but excited to have a conversation with you here. I'd love for those who don't know you or eMarketer, just set the stage for us a little bit. What do you do? Talk to us about eMarketer, the role it serves, and kind of what your role is within that.
Sure. So I am vice president and principal analyst leading our coverage of social media and the creator economy. And so eMarketer is a source of research, insights, and forecasts on digital advertising, e-commerce, and media. And our goal is really to help business decision makers make better decisions. And we do that through our reporting, our long form reports, and our data-driven analysis.
And you've been there for over a decade now, like coming up on 13 years?
It'll be 13 years this year, yeah.
That's pretty impressive. What has kept you at the company for so long?
Well, I really love the work that I do. One of the things I think that sets us apart from other firms that are reporting on some of these big things within social media is that everything we present is data backed. And I really love telling these data driven stories. On top of that, the industry just moves so quickly. I feel like there's something new happening every day. And so there's no shortage of stories to be telling. And I really like that fast paced environment.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit, but in the macro. So the last 10 years, you really started covering kind of social media. When did the creator economy become a focus of coverage for you? And what were some of the kind of signals or milestones along that journey that kind of cemented creator economy as an area of focus?
So I really started focusing on social media, I think in about 2016, 2017. And I was thinking about this before this podcast. And I think the first big report I ever wrote was on Cambridge Analytica and the impact that it had on Facebook's usage and business, which in hindsight was a very intense introduction to the social media industry. But, as I started really focusing on the social platforms, pretty quickly it became apparent that creators and influencers were really driving a lot of usage and engagement and changing the way that we were behaving online. It wasn't, just about connecting with your friends, which was the primary original purpose of social networks. It was becoming more of this sort of entertainment space, as well as a place for brands and consumers to interact with each other largely through creators. And so from there, we really started expanding our coverage of the creator economy. We started by introducing influencer marketing forecasts. I think our first one was in 2016. And then, it really has been the past couple of years where we have just expanded our coverage. And now we have a whole desk really dedicated to covering the creator economy.
So walk me through some of the big chapters from 2016 to now of the creator economy. What have been the big kind of moments of change or movements, if you will, throughout the years?
So one of the biggest ones that comes to mind is the rise of TikTok. I was recently looking back at a piece that I wrote back in 2019 about how TikTok had forever changed the way that we use social media, whether or not it was here to stay, because actually in 2019 was the first time we started talking about a TikTok ban, which is just really wild to think about.
That is wild.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think we forget a lot.
Everything and nothing is new.
Exactly. Nothing really changes. But so I think that was one of the big milestones. And then the pandemic overall, which of course had a huge impact on TikTok's growth. But it also really started to legitimize creator marketing and influencer marketing. And so one of the things that we saw coming out of the pandemic and this was around the time that we had all those iOS changes that also impacted digital advertising, was that influencer marketing was much more resilient than social advertising to a lot of these big challenges. And we saw a lot more brands really turn to influencers and creators as a workaround to some of these challenges. And in many ways, creators and influencers proved themselves as a result of that. And it's just grown into a much bigger space and industry as a result.
Timely, again, kind of the nothing is ever new, everything always changes and nothing ever changes. We are yet again in a moment of uncertainty,
Hmm.
where again, we've kind of seen this movie before, whether you want to talk about the TikTok ban or whether we want to talk about kind of the big geopolitical impacts that are really influencing the way brands are making decisions today. What decisions do you think marketers need to make in these moments? And how do you see those decisions playing out in real time?
Yeah, so we're in a really challenging moment right now, with the all of the economic uncertainty that's really been driven by the on again, off again tariffs. I think a lot of brands are in a wait and see mode. We're not seeing many of them decreasing their investments, but they're not necessarily increasing their investments in creator marketing either. And part of that is because it's just really difficult to plan and it's really hard to know what the right decision is. So we're in kind of this, I would say, holding pattern. As a result of that, actually, we've just published new analysis on what the impact of the tariffs and the economic uncertainty could be. And so, what we're seeing is that social ad spending will continue to grow regardless of what happens, but it may not pass the $100 billion mark that we were previously predicting for 2025. We haven't been able to do the same type of analysis for influencer marketing spending just because there's less visibility into creator pay rates. I just wrote a big report about this. And so it's really hard to quantify what those changes will be. But I think there is an overall expectation that if this uncertainty continues and we do see a stronger economic slowdown, there's really going to be less money on the table for creators and fewer deals as well.
Do you see historically, especially in times of uncertainty, has money moved from one area to another? Obviously, belts tighten, budgets
Hmm.
tighten across the board. But when you look at these proven paths, and even when you were talking about kind of the pandemic and the way creators stepped up when, say, traditional content production channels, advertising were a bit more limited, what are the changes that you would expect given some of those constraints? Again, yes, definitely budgets, belts tightening all around as we find it more difficult to plan and forecast. But do you see shifts, reallocations in budgets in times of uncertainty?
Yeah, it's a great question because certainly we will see that. I mean, one of the things that tends to happen is that brands become much more focused on the lower funnel. And so they will look more towards performance advertising. They'll also look more towards tried and true platforms in the social space that is Meta. So even as we're predicting a slowdown in social ad spending growth, Meta could actually be kind of a beneficiary in that situation. And some of the smaller players like the Snapchats, the X's, and the Pinterest of the world will probably see less money going into those platforms because they're a smaller size. And then when it comes to creators, I think, they can expect more emphasis on the lower funnel. And when you have these campaigns, brands are going to want to see real ROI, real results.
We talked about tariffs. Let's talk about the other T, TikTok. We are in yet again another 90-day delay. What are you
Surprise,
seeing?
surprise.
Right? What are you seeing from kind of the cycle of uncertainty around the fate of TikTok? How are brands, companies, dollars responding?
Yeah, again, I think it's a wait and see approach. I think a lot of us feel very gaslit at this point, creators in particular. We've been here before, and a lot of people just don't believe that it's going to happen. That said, I mean, we're seeing a lot of brands, a lot of creators continue to diversify. Many of them have had sort of contingency plans in place for a long time, and they're acting on those. But we haven't seen dollars shift meaningfully away from TikTok. I don't expect that to happen unless brands, creators, and users are forced to leave the platform.
Yeah, we're seeing the same thing in our data, and we really haven't seen a slowdown or a pullback in creators engaging on the channel and brands incorporating TikTok in their campaigns. engaging in TikTok specific creators definitely have seen very much a kind of stay the course there. I will be really interested. I think to your point, creators are probably the most impacted. And so I do think there is this push for diversification,
Mhm.
right? What's the backup plan? Where else can I show up? Where can I be a compelling storyteller in new formats, new channels? Where do you see, we've talked a lot on our end about the power of, say, like YouTube Shorts,
Mhm.
obviously Reels, maybe emerging channels, which we can make this a two-part question. But yeah, where do you see a lot of the kind of TikTok format and what's worked really well for TikTok? Because I agree, it's been a complete game changer for the way we
Right.
consume content, create content, understand content. What is the most comparable in terms of what works on TikTok will work in?
I actually think the short video platforms are more similar than they are different
Mm.
at this point. And pretty much every social platform is now a short video platform to some degree, right? And so when you're thinking about where we're seeing the most movement, it really is YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels. And those two would be the biggest beneficiaries if TikTok were to disappear. I think the conversation has been shifting toward YouTube already for quite a bit of time, even prior to, the potential of TikTok being banned. There's a lot more urgency now in trying to figure out where, those dollars can go and where creators can go.
Yeah, that's good. I think we always say consumers will go where the creators are. It's why creators are such a pillar for all of the platforms. Like the platforms don't exist without creators. And so I think for us, it's really about where creators go, consumers will follow, and then brands' dollars will follow as well. I do also think it's really interesting if you look back, TikTok is really the only platform that has been able to break through as a major player in the
Mhm.
last, 10, 15 years. Are there emerging platforms that you see in your research that could become more important in the next, several years to 5 years?
I think there are a lot of community driven platforms that are growing in importance, especially in the creator space. So I'm thinking of, the Substacks
Yep.
and the Patreons of the world. But to your point, it is very, very hard to break through into the social market. And not every creator is going to find success on Patreon or Substack. In many ways, you already do have to have a strong following and a core fan base built out before you can transition to a platform like that. And I think the value of TikTok, as well as all of the other social platforms, really is in distribution. And I haven't seen a new emerging platform that can really match the distribution potential of the social platforms.
Okay, so looking back at 2024, you termed 2024 the year of legitimization. Walk me through that.
Yes, I did term 2024 the year of legitimacy, and it's for several reasons. But I think a lot of big things happened in the market last year. And so, one that I always point to is Mr. Beast became the number one most subscribed to YouTube channel. We saw Cannes Lions, which is the biggest advertising festival, launch a creator track. And all of these things really led to this legitimization of creators and influencers within the marketing industry. We're at a point now where every CMO, every brand understands that they need to be working with creators and influencers. I will say, though, that not every single one of them is rushing towards creators and influencers with open arms. Some of it is begrudging, but even this mindset shift of understanding that this is a space that they need to be working in is a huge transition from even just a year prior.
What are some of the limiting factors on that growth? Like why it isn't a running towards creators in a universal way? What's holding us back?
I think one of the biggest roadblocks to increasing investments in influencer marketing is still measurement. It just really hasn't kept up. We don't have a universal or standardized framework to measure the success of influencer marketing campaigns. And it can be a really difficult story sometimes to tell to CFOs, especially in an economic environment like the one that we're in. They want to see real and immediate ROI. Sometimes they want just one big metric, and there really just isn't that in influencer marketing just yet. I'm actually about to write a big report on an influencer marketing measurement framework to try to help brands understand how they can better present the success of their campaigns. And I think a lot of it comes down to really understanding what the goal of a partnership or a campaign is upfront, and then setting the KPIs and metrics to match that goal. And so if you're thinking about something like brand awareness, you're probably going to want to look at saves or shares, for example. But if you want to drive lower funnel goals, you'll probably look at things like clicks. And it's very, very depending on what type of goal you're trying to achieve with the campaign.
Yep. And outcome first. We
Yes.
look at things very much outcome first, but also across different lenses. So campaign, absolutely, but also program, right? Like your program is a collection of campaigns, but it's also the evergreen community, right? That
Right.
you nurture, that you foster over time and build and grow. And then business and program. And I do think that the complexity of that, right? It's not unfamiliar. That is how every other form of advertising works, right?
Hmm.
It's campaigns, it's programs that you're trying to achieve in the aggregate or collective, and then the ultimate impact that's making on your business. But because there isn't a standard framework that felt sense of like we've been doing this for so many years, it's really hard to compare those things apples to apples. So I think that's mainly a double down of what you said in terms of I think measurement framework standards, the ability to plan, forecast, understand what you're going to get out of something that I think historically has been a very unpredictable
Hmm.
environment that can be uncomfortable for brands still today.
Absolutely. And, to your point, I think a lot of it also comes down to the fact that a lot of brands are still using incorrect metrics all the way from the beginning, right? So, one of the things that I've been seeing in my research is that a lot of brands are still looking at vanity metrics or surface level metrics when they're choosing which creators and influencers to work with, because that doesn't accurately reflect the business potential or the ability of a creator to drive business outcomes for brands. It can lead to misaligned expectations and thus disappointing outcomes. And then what we see is that the entire tactic gets dismissed. But if you can set those goals in advance, understand what your campaign or your program is trying to achieve, and then work with the right creators and influencers to achieve those goals, we're going to see much more successful campaigns and more money than invested into the tactic.
Where do you think brands are getting it right today?
Ooh, I think the fact that we're already seeing more brands lean into creators and influencers means that they are truly starting to get it right.
Mm.
Brands who are also active themselves on social platforms and using influencer marketing as part of a more holistic strategy, I think really are the ones that are winning in this space.
I agree. I think like the converse of that question obviously would be where are brands getting it wrong, but it is what we see with our customers and I think where they're finding a lot of success is that influencers don't sit on their own
Mhm.
anymore, right? They are a central source and well for everything from content creation, creative supply chain. Again, you mentioned earlier the shift in COVID to content production with creators and creators really stepping up to the table. I think also the type of content that is really resonating today is that
Mm.
more kind of raw unpolished content. And so creators can be a huge source for that. So we see our brands running UGC campaigns, working with creators for content production solely, right, to feed their owned and operated channels, their paid programs. But then also we see the teams, like the actual how they operate, the structure of the
Mhm.
teams. They're sitting closer together. There's not a huge difference between the social team, the influencer team, the paid team. And I think that integration of creators in what your business is trying to solve for is the big unlock. It's not how am I going to run an
Right.
influencer marketing campaign? It's how can creators help me solve problems for my business? And that I think is a big mind shift. I'm curious if the big mind shift last year was really bringing legitimacy to creators. Again, that shift in most business leaders today understanding that they should be playing in this space. What does 2025 look like? And then, as a second to that, how do some of the forces and factors happening right now influence kind of how the year is shaping up?
So I've been calling 2025 the year of professionalization for the creator economy. And I think that fits in very well with a lot of what you just said. We are seeing brands just get more serious about their influencer marketing strategies. They have more tools, they have more resources, they have more experience, and they're using that to really inform their decisions rather than blindly throwing money at influencer marketing. we are also seeing more serious industries start to lean in, and we're seeing professional creators, B2B creators on LinkedIn really play a strong role in that. And then we're also seeing creators themselves get more serious about their content and their businesses. And so they're moving from ad hoc content to more programmed or planned content that's manifesting in so many different ways, including upfronts that were hosted recently. And they're also scaling their content and their businesses beyond social media. They're in on CTV, they're on podcasts, their products are in retail stores. And so we're kind of entering this more professionalized, broader realm of the creator economy.
Yeah, actually, I think that's really interesting. You mentioned Mr. Beast earlier, and one of the things that's interesting to me is that he actually makes more money on Feastables than
Yeah.
he does as a content creator. So, as a brand owner, right, using his platform to create these brands, to launch a portfolio of brands over time, we're seeing that quite a bit, actually. So many of our customers today are creator founded, creator led brands. And that has been something we've seen for years, but definitely starting to achieve a scale so quickly that has, taken similar brands years to achieve.
Yeah, and on the flip side, and I think this speaks to the second part of your question in terms of how does all this uncertainty fit into this? I mean, always talk about Mr. Beast, and he is a great example to look up to, but he's also an anomaly.
Yeah.
The
You
kind
mean
of
not every creator is Mr. Beast?
exactly. And what we're also noticing is, or what I would say is that there's never been a better time to be a creator, but there's also never been a more difficult time to be a creator. So technically, it is now easier to build an audience and monetize that audience. But a lot of creators are also realizing that virality doesn't guarantee success. And it is, in many ways, harder than ever to go viral because our social media usage is so much more fragmented. The market is so crowded. And what I see is probably going to be very different than what you see on your For You page. And just because you have a successful viral video doesn't necessarily mean you're going to build a successful, sustainable business. And then you have TikTok, of course, which is the breeding ground for a lot of up and coming creators potentially being taken away. And so all of that kind of breeds into this increasing sense of insecurity and instability within the creator economy.
Yep. I do like the empathy, I think that builds, because what you said about creators, it's never been a better time or a more challenging time. I think it's true for marketers as well. Like, it's never been a more challenging time to be a marketer, but it's also never been a more exciting time, right? So much space ahead of us, so much changing, the pace of that change accelerating over time, advancements in AI technology. Like, what role does AI play in the creator economy today? Good, bad, otherwise?
I'm actually just about to start writing a report on this.
Okay.
I think feelings toward AI are really mixed right now. I think there's a lot of fear among creators, not necessarily so much that it's going to replace them. I think there's enough evidence out there that we're not quite ready for virtual influencers just yet. And I think there will always be a place for human creativity and human connection. But there is a lot of concerns over copyright issues or, some of these AI tools training their models on creator content or having that content be repurposed or reused. At the same time, I think they see a lot of opportunity, especially with things like translations or dubbing that can ultimately help them reach a much wider audience with their content. Then, of course, all the things that everybody says about AI, which is that it helps you save time, it streamlines processes. I think we're seeing a lot of that really kind of help to improve the workflows of many creators. And marketers, when we were at Cannes I think it was in 2023, everybody was talking about how AI was going to transform everything and it was pretty much going to be immediate. And AI is certainly a transformative technology, and the changes are happening more quickly than anything we've ever seen before. And when you're asking a lot of marketers, if they're using AI, most of them will say yes. But if you drill down deeper into how they're using it, a lot of times, it's for many of the simple, mundane tasks. Again, streamlining processes, making things faster, cutting down the amount of time that you need to do something, and giving yourself more space to focus on the more important tasks at hand. We're not really seeing it create content or really be the driving force behind ad creative
Mm.
yet.
I, as a person who believes in the power of like human to human connection, really appreciate that that is like taking a little bit longer to take hold. We've done some studies on our end as well to see what virtual AI creators can do in comparison to their human counterparts. And what we see is like people are definitely interested. They check it out, but they don't
Right.
engage, right? That's not a meaningful connection in the way that I think at its purest form, creators and their communities have a real connection. It's a conversation. They connect over shared values. They go through things together. I think it's one of the reasons that a lot of these creators that have been able to kind of reach these upper spheres of maybe creating their own private communities on a Substack, Discord, etc., whether it is creating their own brands that achieve success or even just achieving bigger and better partnerships over time, their community's on that ride with them because it's like a
Hmm.
human effort, right?
Yeah.
So we see in our data the same thing. It's fun to watch. It's definitely something we talk about a lot, but we're just not seeing it play out in terms of what generally we want to engage with online.
Yeah, and that could change, you know? I mean, as the younger generations grow up and start using social media and digital platforms overall, AI is going to be a part of their experience. And so we could get to a place where virtual influencers are the norm and people are okay with that. We're just not there yet. And I think to your point, yes, of course, there's interest, there's curiosity. But at the end of the day, what makes creators and influencers so powerful is that human connection and the ability to kind of be along with them for the ride, right? And we're missing that when it's an AI generated influencer.
Okay, so taking the note of being along for the ride, as you look forward to, I won't say the next decade because that is just a wild thing to predict. Obviously, you've already really started wrapping your hands around what next year looks like in the creator economy. What does it look like for you, for eMarketer, for your role? What excites you about kind of entering the next decade of your tenure at this company?
A lot is happening. A lot is changing really quickly. Right now, we're in the process of starting to put together our big future of digital report. We do this annually and kind of trying to look at the big trends that are going to shape the next year as well as, further on down the line. I think some of the big things that interest me is really just seeing social become such an important part of overall holistic marketing strategies and just watching the importance of the space that I'm covering grow among the people who I'm writing to, which are advertisers and marketers. And I'm expecting more of that to happen over the next, I would say 10 years. I mean, it's going to look very, very different 10 years from now, but I believe that that will remain the same.
And because of that, because it's growing, because more people are kind of coming to the table around the professionalization of the creator economy, of social, it's
Hmm.
playing a bigger and bigger role. You are out there a lot talking to
Yes.
people about it, right? This is like inquiring minds want to know. And so you're very high in demand these days. Tell me a little bit about that part of your job, about the public kind of facing aspects of your role and how you find that.
I love the public aspect of my role. It's really great to be able to do both longer form, deep dive research and then be able to talk about some of the more immediate things that are happening in the world and on social media. And I think social is such a news driven industry and it shapes so much of what we're seeing more broadly in the world. So, right now, for example, I've been covering Meta's antitrust trial, talking to a lot of reporters about what's at stake for Meta and what that could mean for the overall social landscape if it were forced to sell off WhatsApp and Instagram. So that part, it's exciting, it's challenging. I do a lot of live TV, which you never know what they're going to ask you, and things could happen at any moment while you're talking, but it keeps you on your toes. And I think it's incredibly important when you're covering a space like social to be a part of that conversation and to know what's going on in the world, because I think that really helps inform the research and the recommendations that we're giving.
Okay, last question.
Sure.
What advice do you have for leaders today as they start to get more curious about the space? And what advice do you have for anyone looking to get into this space early in their career?
For leaders, I would say it's really important to be strategic about how you enter the space. I still think, from at least the research and the conversations that I'm having, there is a lack of understanding in terms of how to work with creators and influencers. It's not a transactional relationship. It should be a longer term relationship. It's much more valuable for both the creator and for the brand. And so, thinking strategically about who you're partnering with and how you're partnering with them, and again, what the goals of these partnerships, programs, and campaigns are, is incredibly important as you're starting to enter the space.
Yep. And then what about somebody who's just starting out their career? And I know this can go in so many ways, right? Like we know that being a creator is actually like the number one thing
Right.
that kids these days want to be. I keep saying kids these days, makes me feel very old, but also fair
Yes.
because I've been here for a minute.
Same.
Uh,
So I get it.
but yeah, is whether it's to be a creator or wanting to be involved in again like the way marketing is transforming before our eyes. What do you think they need to bring into this experience that will kind of set them up for success?
I think creators need to have a business mindset from the get-go. I mean, we hear a lot of people, especially on LinkedIn, talk about how creators are just creatives and they're doing it for the love of creation. And that doesn't necessarily make you money, right? And so I think, having that business mindset from the very beginning will be incredibly helpful to creators. And also finding your niche. I know this is, overused, but because of the way that our social behavior has evolved and the algorithms have evolved, it's incredibly important for creators to find something that they are passionate about, are knowledgeable about, and focus on building that niche and content that speaks to that niche and to the audience that's interested in it.
I love that. I think it's also, again, if you are approaching things with a business mentality, it is what is your unique value proposition? What
Right.
perspective? What are you bringing to the table that
Exactly.
only you can bring to the table, right? And then tell that story. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for being here today. I know we could have talked about so many more things for so much more time, but I appreciate the time you gave us.
Thanks so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Be a friend, tell a friend, and subscribe. Earned by CreatorIQ. CreatorIQ is your all-in-one solution to grow, manage, scale, and measure your influencer marketing program. Ready to unlock the power of the creator economy? Get started with a demo today at CreatorIQ.com.